Hey, what's up? My name's Alea. Welcome back to my channel, and welcome to another video. So today we're going to be doing the mid-year book freakout tag. So if you've been around on booktube for a while, you know that the mid-year book freakout tag is an annual book tag that people have been doing for many moons. I'm not sure who the original creator was, but I will try and link their video below if I can find it. I decided to do this after watching Christy from Christy Reads' video, and I'll leave the questions down below in case you would like to do this book tag as well. But basically it's just a bunch of questions that are all about your reading so far in the year. And so I really liked the questions, and so I decided I was going to go ahead and do this tag. I have not done it for many years, but I really liked the questions that Christy did. So the first question is, what's the best book you've read so far in 2024? So the best book I've read so far, I think, is Mayfly by CJ Lead. This was a book club pick, I believe in January, for my book club called the Big Bad Booty Bitches Book Club, and I really loved it. It's a really dark, messed up horror novel about a serial killer, and there's also a romance in here that was really good. It's a really dark romance, and I just had such a great time with this book. There's so many like visceral, nasty, gory scenes in here.
Stab, 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 sting, sting, sting! What are you doing? I'm squeezing lemon into your wound!
That were totally wild and will live rent-free in my head probably for ages, and I just had a really great time reading it. It was a really fun book club discussion, and I am really excited to see what else this author comes out with in the future because this book was fabulous. And the other book that I've read so far this year that I think is like my second favorite is probably Mary by Nat Cassidy. This is another like dark horror novel. It also involves a serial killer, but we're following this main character, Mary, who's going through menopause, and she thinks that she may be like a reincarnated version of the serial killer guy who died on her birthday many years ago, and he used to kill women. And there's also like a weird cult element to this story. It's also a horror that's set in the desert, and I really am enjoying these like spooky desert horror novels that I've been reading lately, and it was really fabulous. Again, another book club pick. Had a great discussion with Richie about this one, and it was fabulous. Again, very hard to read in certain areas of this book, but overall, I really loved it, and it took me by surprise because both of those authors were new to me this year. And so those are my top two that I've read. And then question 2 is, what's the best sequel you've read so far this year? So I think the best sequel is book 2 in the Devil's Rock series by Sophie Jordan. It's called Hell Breaks Loose, I believe. And this one was written more towards the early 2000s. Is it the best book ever written? Absolutely not. But is it totally fun and just like wild and spicy? Absolutely yes. And I've been loving it. It's following this guy who is an escaped inmate, and he basically started a riot in the prison so he could break out because he's trying to kill the guy who put him in prison, and we're not really sure why. Our main character, Reed, was sentenced to life in prison for a crime he did not commit, and everybody thinks he's guilty and he's not, and he went to jail when he was like 19, and now he's in his 30s, and he's a big dude. He basically is the leader of this gang in prison, so he's a badass.
These white men are dangerous.
And he's really smart, very conniving, very cunning, and so he basically gets out of the prison when the riot breaks out. He gets sent to the hospital because he's injured, and then he breaks out of the hospital to kill this man, and we don't know why he's trying to kill him after all these years of being in jail or what has changed back home. But he breaks out, and the story goes from there, and he ends up having a romance with the daughter of the president of the United States.
What, like it's hard?
And she ends up getting kidnapped by Reed's little brother, and Reed has no idea what's happening. He ends up going to his brother's house, and he finds out that they kidnapped this woman, and he's like, oh, like, I don't want to be involved with this. This is bad news bears. And he knows that these dudes are like dirtbags. His brother's a total dirtbag, druggy, not a good guy. And so Reed is like, hey, I'm gonna try and get this girl out of here, but I can't just steal her, otherwise these dudes will kill us. So the two of them are kind of scheming, trying to get her to a place that's safe, but they also have this immediate chemistry right off the bat, and it's very interesting. The president's daughter is very smart, but she's very kind of innocent, and she's known for being really shy and kind of awkward and stuff, but she's actually a really sharp gal. But she's never really had any kind of romantic relationships that were positive. And anyways, she's a little bit more of a plus size gal, and a lot of people make rude comments about her body and stuff like that, but it's really good. They end up being in this really isolated place together, and it's very some ways enemies to lovers a little bit, because she doesn't know if she can trust him, and it's very fun. A lot of really sweet scenes in here, a lot of just fun banter that I really enjoyed. They have a lot of sexual tension, and it's fabulous. So anyways, I've been eating that up and absolutely loving it. So I think that's my favorite sequel from this year. I've read a few romance sequels, but I think that one definitely takes the cake for me. And then question 3 is, what's a new release you haven't read but want to? I have a few for this. I haven't been super good about reading the 2024 releases that I was anticipating the most. So I definitely need to read the new one from Nouveau, and I can't remember what the title is, but it's the one with the foxes. I'll put the cover up here. It's a new novella. I know the audiobook is on Hoopla. I just really need to listen to it. And I also need to read The Scandalous Ladies of London, The Duchess. That came out quite a few months ago, and I bought the ebook and I still haven't read it, and I need to. I know it's gonna be great. I loved book 1 in that series, The Countess, and I really have no excuse for not having read this yet. I also need to read, I think it's called Somewhere in the Deep. It's a companion novel to Monsters Born and Made that I read, I think it was 2 years ago now, and I really enjoyed that. This is a YA fantasy that's set in this world where there's these underwater monsters and creatures. And it's set on an island, and I don't think it's following the same characters as book 1, but it's set in the same fantasy world, and maybe it's on a different island. I think there's multiple islands in this ocean area that has all the sea monsters and stuff, and it has to do with an undersea expedition, I believe, and there's some murderer on the expedition who's picking people off one by one, and our main character has to figure out who it is and why they want her dead, while also fighting all of these sea monsters in these underwater caves and stuff. It sounds really good. I need to read that. So those are a few of the ones that I was really looking forward to that I haven't gotten to yet. And question 4 is, what's the most anticipated new release you have for the second half of the year? So I would say second half of the year, I'm really looking forward to American Rapture by CJ Lead. This is the same author who wrote Mayfly. Her second book is coming out in November, and I am incredibly excited. I think this is going to be another book club pick for my book club, the Big Bad Booty Bitches book club. I'm super excited about this. I think it's set in a small religious town in the Midwest, and it has something to do with church stuff. I'm not sure if there's a cult involved. I believe it's kind of an apocalyptic story as well, and it's giving tornadoes and cows and the Lord, and I am so excited to see what CJ Lead is going to do next with this story. I think it's going to be fabulous, and I'm super stoked about that. I'm also really excited about another new release. Sorry, I'm looking down at my laptop because I have my handy dandy master spreadsheet here for all my book stuff. I need to do a video where I just go through this spreadsheet. But I have a tab in here for new releases that are coming out. So the other one I'm really looking forward to, I believe also comes out in November, and it's book 3 in the Rebel Blue Ranch series by Lila Sage, and it's called Lost and Lassoed, and it comes out November 5th. I'm super excited about this. I am now caught up on that series because I just finished Switch and Saddle not too long ago, and so Lost and Lassoed, book 3, is following two characters that we have seen quite a bit of in books 1 and 2, and we're following Gus and Teddy, and they have known each other for many years. It's kind of an enemies to lovers thing, and basically Teddy, the girl, is the guy Gus's little sister's bestie. and they also have dads who are like really good friends, and so their families have been very close for a long time. But in the first few books they have quite a bit of banter, and it seems like Gus doesn't really like Teddy for some reason, and Teddy has a lot of attitude, and so she's always giving Gus a lot of sass and like kind of joking with him and making fun of him and stuff, and it's really funny. Like, they have a really good entertaining dynamic, and I'm interested to see how they kind of flip that switch of like having banter and like Gus kind of being like growly and stuff when she's around, to him being like down bad for her. But it's also interesting because the guy in here, Gus, is a single dad. He had like a one-night stand a long time ago with this lady Cam, who is also still like involved in the series. I think her book is book 4, and they just released the cover for that the other day. Stunning. Cannot wait for Cam's book in 2025. Anyways, Gus and Cam have this daughter, Riley, and she's pretty young. I think she's maybe like 6 or 8, somewhere in there. And so they are co-parenting and stuff, and they, you know, do fine with that. But they had a one-night stand, but they weren't like in love, and they didn't want to continue to have a relationship of any sort. They're just like friends now. And so Gus is very much focused on like his job at the ranch and helping out his family and being focused on his daughter and things like that. And so that's also, I imagine, a factor in here with Teddy as well, that now they would be raising his daughter together and that kind of thing. But it's really cute. We get a lot of scenes with his little daughter Riley, and Teddy obviously knows her because she's really close to the family and stuff, so I'm really excited. I think this is going to be really fun, lots of banter, probably very spicy, and I'm super stoked for it. So those are the 2 that I'm really, really excited for the end of 2024. And then question 5 is, what's the biggest disappointment that you've had this year? So I think book-wise, my biggest disappointment is probably Diavola. I, again, read this as a book club pick, and it was okay, but I really wanted more from it. It's a horror novel that's supposed to be like vacation horror, and it's set in Europe at this creepy old house that is very haunted. The original owners had some sort of like blight or something that came through their vineyard and stuff and killed a bunch of people in the family, and it killed this one woman who I think was like in love with one of the other family members. Anyway, so her ghost like haunts this place, and basically they now rent it out as like a vacation home for tourists and stuff. And so essentially it seems like the locals kind of have this pact of like, they know the house is haunted, but they have to feed like the ghosts or whatever who live there, and so they let the tourists stay here, and like whatever happens to the tourists happens to the tourists, and like more power to them for doing that. But this book really could have been so much more entertaining. The characters were kind of despicable, and I think that was intentional, but they were just really annoying more than anything else, and it kind of took away from the enjoyment of reading the book itself. And I liked the setting. I just wish that it would have gone there a little bit more and been more scary. It was more like a little bit eerie with really annoying characters, and the whole time you're kind of just like waiting for it to get good and get super spooky and really go there, and it just doesn't really do that enough in my opinion. It was okay, it was mid, it was like a 3-star-ish, but it probably could have been like a 4.5 plus if it would have really gone there and had a little bit more depth with the characters and less random drama. And there were some parts as well that were kind of confusing in terms of like what was actually happening, because there's so many characters in this family that's staying in the rental house that you're kind of like, okay, spooky things are happening and everybody's running all over the house. Okay, who's alive and who's not? And it gets a little bit convoluted, if that makes sense. And it was a little bit of a letdown for me. And the other one that was a little bit of a letdown, which I hate to say this because this book is absolutely stunningly beautiful, but I would say that's probably The Baker and the Bard. So this is a really, really cute gay graphic novel. Loved the gayness, but the plot just wasn't really there for me. Like, there isn't much that happens in the story, and it's really a bummer because the art is, I mean, stunning. Look at this. It's beautiful. It's a cozy fantasy. We love to see that. It's got 2 main characters who are gay, and it's got this really cute little bakery element and everything, but it just didn't have a lot of like substance, if that makes sense. And it really kind of bummed me out because I thought this book could be, you know, really special and really magical and really go there. But I feel like I needed a little bit more from the characters. I needed a little bit more from the plot in terms of like, what are we doing other than like gallivanting around in a field. with some big ass caterpillars. You know what I'm saying? Anyways, not to be a downer, this book is absolutely stunning. I still recommend it if you're looking for a super cozy fantasy and you want to look at some stunning art. However, again, it's kind of with Diavola, I felt like it could have gone there more and leaned into what it was trying to be a little bit more. And again, it was like a 3-star. So that's kind of where I'm at with things that were disappointing. I don't want to dwell on that too much because none of the books I've read so far this year have been like ones that I've viscerally hated or anything like that. It's mostly just ones that were like kind of mid and could have been better. Now, question 6 is, what's the biggest surprise you've had this year? So I think there's a couple books that I've read that really kind of surprised me. Like, I didn't really go in having any kind of expectations for what they were going to be, and they ended up being really extremely good. So one of those is Someone You Can Build a Nest In, and this is one that I just randomly picked up during Pride Month because I wanted to read something that was gay and that was a new release, and I'd been hearing people talking about this and saying it was good. So this is a kind of whimsical fantasy story, and it's adult, and it's following this woman named Shisheshin who's actually a monster. And she has this really unique power where she can shift her body in different ways and like take inanimate objects into her body and reform herself around them to use them as weapons or like protection. She can also kill people and take on their form and also take like their organs into her own body if she needs lungs or a mouth to speak or whatever. And so it's really easy for her to change her appearance and hide amongst humans if she needs to. And normally she lives in like a cave and kind of minds her own business. Well, these monster killers come in and try to take her out while she's hibernating at the beginning of the story. And she gets really pissed off and she takes them out. But she gets hurt really bad. And so she has to go into the village in order to like feed and kind of build up her strength again. Well, one thing leads to another, and she ends up being really, really badly injured, and she ends up being found by a human woman who's a healer, and she kind of takes Shisheshin in and cares for her and nurses her back to health. And one thing leads to another, and Shisheshin ends up finding out more about this woman and realizing that one of the guys who was leading the monster hunters was this woman's big brother, and the monster lady Shisheshin killed him. And this healer lady doesn't know that, and she and Shisheshin are starting to have this romance. The healer lady's family is very toxic and supposedly has this curse on them that was put on them by the monster. And Shisheshin's like, I didn't curse you, so I don't know what you're talking about. And the story kind of goes from there. There's a lot of whimsical magical elements in here. Shisheshin, the monster, has this like animal companion who is a blue bear named Blueberry, and it's really cute. There's a lot of different like magic in this world. There's some like traveling scenes. There's a lot of like fun fight scenes in here that I really enjoyed. There's also a really like tender relationship between Shisheshin and the healer woman. And it's very sapphic, very cute, very whimsical. It reminds me a little bit of the vibes of Thornhead by T. Kingfisher, if you read that. That's like another fantasy kind of novella story. So it reminds me of that in some ways, and I really enjoyed that. So I would definitely recommend Someone You Can Build a Nest In. Also, it's written by a man, which is also like really surprising to me, to be honest, because I think the sapphic elements are done really well. Being in the female characters' heads felt really like natural, and I thought it was really well done, to be perfectly honest. And the other one that really surprised me this year was The Invocations by Crystal Sutherland. So this is a witchy story, and we're following 3 different women, and one of them has some witchy abilities. Another one also has witchy abilities, but she has basically sold parts of her soul to like 3 different demons in order to get these magic powers, and it's taken a huge toll on her body, and she's trying to undo it, but she can't. And so she has this really severe like leg injury that's related to like her connection to this one demon in particular, and it's like festering, and she's really unwell, but she's kind of like stuck, and it's really kind of strange. And then there's another girl in here whose older sister died. She was murdered, and the younger sister is trying to bring her older sister back from the dead with necromancy magic, and she has no idea what she's doing. And the 3 women kind of come together because there's someone in the town who is murdering witches and people who were like associated with witches, and so all of these girls are kind of getting swept up in different ways in this murder investigation. And the murderer is also the same person who killed the one girl's older sister. And it's really strange because the killer is taking like little squares of flesh from the victims' bodies, and they have no idea who it is, but they think it's a man. And in this world, men do not have the ability to have like witchy powers. And so they don't know who this guy is or what's going on or why he's killing witches or how he's tracking them all down. But it's very strange. And it's very magical and funny and snarky. I really like all the characters. They're all really vivid and entertaining to listen to. I never had the feeling that like I was waiting to get back to a different POV. They're all equally interesting and entertaining. We get the POV of all three of the women and we get their backstories, and they're all just really entertaining and fun. And what else did I really enjoy this year? That was kind of a surprise. Those two for sure. Oh, I also really enjoyed How Far the Light Reaches by Sabrina Embler. This was another one that I picked up on the whim for Pride Month, and it's nonfiction. It's an essay collection, and it's one of those ones where the author brings in a bunch of different elements that you wouldn't think would go together, but she makes them mesh really well. And so basically she talks about her own life through kind of the lens, and also weaves it into the lives of different sea creatures. And so you kind of get like a biology lesson and also some backstory on our author. And she talks a lot about all kinds of different topics. She talks about having an eating disorder. She talks about like sexual assault stuff. She talks about being Asian American in the US and her Chinese heritage and all these different things. And she ties it into like mother octopuses and her connection with her mom and all these different things. It's very layered, but it's very well done and very entertaining. It's one of those books where you are reading and then you get really engrossed in the story, and next thing you know you're like halfway through and you're like, oh my god, I just read all of these like fabulous essays that made me think about so many different topics. Anyways, fascinating read, highly recommend, especially if you're looking for some really good gay nonfiction. This is it. If you love essays, this is it. Love it. Love to see it. Ooh, okay, so question number 7 is, what's your favorite new to you author? So I think my favorite as of this moment, I believe her name is Lizzie Strong, and I just discovered her because she wrote How to Marry a Lich, and this is a monster romance that I read recently during Summerween. And I also discovered that she has a bunch of other books set in the same fantasy world. It's called King's Fall, and she has a whole bunch of monster romances set in the same world. And they're really cool because she writes a lot of monster romances that are about different kinds of monsters. So the one that I read was following a guy who's a lich, and before he became a lich, he was kind of like a mermaid sea monster. And there's also a lot of talk in here about different gods. And she has another book that I just started reading right at the beginning called Hauntings and Company. And that one is following a guy who's a Zilf, and he has like the tentacles on his face like Davy Jones. And he has a romance with this woman who's an elf, and she's also a warlock who's connected to the god Cthulhu, who's a tentacle god. And so there's a lot of tentacle stuff, but she also has some other ones too. I know she's got one that's a sapphic one about a burlesque dancer, and there's another one about a guy who's some kind of cat monster, and I think he has a romance with a barista. Anyways, there's lots of magical creatures, a very fun world, just kind of unique creatures and unique monster romances that are really fun, and they have like tender moments with really good banter and stuff. It's also a lot of really spicy scenes, but the monsters are really unique and the world is really vast, and the romances are all like their own thing. They're like companion novels. It's not a series, but since it's in the same world, the different characters from various books show up in other books, and so there is some crossover, and some of the characters are like friends and whatnot. And so I've really been enjoying kind of exploring her backlist, and I really want to get into her stuff a little bit more. Okay, and then question 8 is, what's your favorite fictional character from recently? That's really a fabulous question. I don't know if I have an answer to this off the top of my head. I mean, Maeve from Mavefly was really entertaining. Is she a messed up gal? 110%. Is she super interesting to read about? Yes. I also really enjoyed Sebastian from How to Marry a Lich. He's the lich guy in here. His powers are super cool. He is really thoughtful and kind to his magic staff that works for him, and he really takes care of them in a lot of ways, and he's also really sweet to his love interest Alea too, and I like that a lot. I also really like some of the characters in the graphic novel I'm reading right now. It's called Another Kind. It's following this group of magic kids who are kind of like the X-Men, and they have this found family going on, and I really like the Yeti guy in here, Omar. He's really interesting, and there's also a little girl in here named Maggie who she's amphibious, and she's got like these little tentacles for hair, and she is so cute and tender, and I love her to death. So I think those are some of my faves at the moment. And question 9 is, what's a book that made you cry? I know for a fact that Mayfly made me cry my eyes out at the end of this novel for no reason. I got the acknowledgements and I was just like weeping on the couch. Why? This is a gross horror novel. I don't know. There's a whole thing that happens at the end with Maeve and her love interest, and that took me out. I about died on the couch. I was so emotional for no reason. I don't know if I was like PMSing or what, but like it got me right in the feels really hard. I was dying. I was fighting for my life, just like streaming tears down my face like 5 minutes before the live show for book club. Anyway, so that one took me out. I know there's a few others in here that I've read this year that kind of made me tear up a little bit. I feel like at the end of House of Hollow, I might have teared up a little bit in the last half of the book because there's some sad things that happened there as well. There's also a few others in here that I think might have made me tear up. I think I teared up a little bit towards the end of A Seduction at Christmas. This is a historical romance, kind of set at Christmas, but mostly not, to be honest. And we're following this guy who's a duke and this woman who's Scottish, and they have a lot of fun banter and stuff, but their story was kind of like crazy up and down towards the end and whatnot. I think I teared up at that too, just because it was like really tender and cute. So I think those are the ones that made me tear up or bawl my eyes out. Then question 10 is, what's a book that made you happy? I feel like How Far the Light Reaches made me happy just because it was really entertaining and made me ponder a lot of things, which was fun. Someone You Can Build a Nest In also made me happy because that sapphic romance was cute as hell. All Chained Up by Sophie Jordan, and then the sequel Hell Breaks Loose were also ones that made me happy. Less that they made me happy, more that they made me scream into the void because the romances were so good and there was so much tension that I was just like beside myself, kicking my little feet. Question 11 is, what's the most beautiful book you've bought or received this year? I have to say, without a shadow of a doubt, that has to go to The Familiar by Leigh Bardugo. Can we take a minute for these sprayed edges? Hello! I'm aware that they're just black, but I don't have any books with sprayed edges, and the end papers, stunning. There's like little pomegranates. Oh my god, this book has no business being this pretty. Hello? The aesthetic. We really love to see it. And the cover is also just gorgeous. Hello? I need to read this as well. I have not read it yet. I've heard a lot of things about it, but I also feel like it's one of those where a lot of people have reviewed it and said it's good, but I still feel like I have no idea what this book is about. Some people say it's about vampires. Some people say it's not. There's a scorpion coming out of her sleeve. I don't know what's happening, but it's magical. And that's all I really needed to know. Okay, last question is, what books do you need to read or finish by the end of the year? I have, I think, like 13 books that I'm currently reading. So I need to finish all of those. And also, I have some books I want to read for future vlogs. Am I going to get all these done by the end of the year and post all these videos? You know, that's a fabulous question. I'm going to assume not, knowing myself the way I do. But I will say, I want to finish up my witchy reading vlog. I started it quite a while ago, but then I kind of realized that I wanted to do like a vlog series on my channel where I do almost like creature feature vlogs. Like I want to do a witchy vlog, I want to do a vampire vlog, I want to do a mermaid vlog. So I have some books for all of those that I'd like to read. So for the witchy one, I have the Book of Gothel that I started and need to finish. I'm only like, I don't even know, like 30 pages in. I need to finish that. And I have 2 for the mermaid vlog I want to read. Chlorine by Jade Song. Everybody says this is so good, and I started reading it quite a while ago and like soft DNF'd it because I just couldn't get into it. Like I really want to read it. I know that I'm gonna love it, but I feel like the first time I tried to pick it up, I just wasn't in a place for this kind of story, and I feel like this summer I am. And then I also really want to read Plain Jane and the Mermaids. This is a middle grade graphic novel, really cool art style. very fun. I'm excited to read about mermaids. I feel like I have not read very many mermaid books, but I would like to. I would really like to remedy that very clear flaw. So I think the mermaids in here are kind of like creepy though, if you can see Miss Creepy right here. Anyways, so we need to read about mermaids and witches, and I'd love to do a vampire vlog sometime, maybe in the fall, maybe like Halloween-y time or something like that. And then I also have a lot of books for different reading challenges I said I was gonna do and have not worked on very much, quite frankly. So I have my 12 books, 12 months, 12 friends challenge. I'll put that up here. I'll put the list of books that I got recommended. So I've read one, and that was Mayfly, but I need to read the other 11. And then I also have my list of like 24 books in 2024 that I wanted to read, and I'd like to revisit that as well. I read one, and that was Mary. I'm currently reading another one, and then the other, like 22, I have not even opened at all. Haven't even cracked a cover, folks. So I need to get on that if I actually want to like complete some of these goals. Anyways, with that being said, let me know in the comments what books you need to read by the end of the year, because I would love to know. And I will see you in another video very soon. Bye!